door, please. Blasting off.
What did you do to your hair?
It was making me nervous, so I chopped it off. Big mistake, huh?
No, I sort of like it.
You got a Lulu.
Huh? Yeah, I better not get too close.
I never catch colds.
Really? I was reading some figures from the Sickness and Accident Claims Division. Do you know that the average New Yorker between the ages of 20 and 50 has 2.5 colds a year?
Now, that makes me feel just terrible.
Why?
Well, to make the figures come out even, if I have no colds a year, some poor slob must have 5 colds a year.
Yeah, it's me.
Should have stayed in bed this morning.
I should have stayed in bed last night.
The following film podcast frequently contains adult content, including foul language and descriptions of adult situations. Spoilers for the films discussed occur often. Listener discretion is advised. Now take it away, Dr. Rausch. Welcome back to the Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 150.
Wow.
Yeah.
Auspicious occasion.
Yeah, we're here. 150.
Yeah.
It's,
We should have planned something, I guess.
I think this movie is worthy of.
It's actually one of my favorites. So
Yeah. So I'm your host Lee. That's the way it crumbles, cookie wise, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host Daniel. Just because I wear a uniform doesn't make me a Girl Scout. Harper, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, and technically, I was never even a brownie.
I was debating of whether using that quote or I think it's only fair to warn you that you are now alone with a notorious sex pot.
That would have worked as well. The sex pot, that's one of the, certain words work one way in 1959 or 1960, feel a little different in 2019.
It feels really weird having Jack Lemmon be called a sex pot. I've never seen it used with the male gender. I've always only seen it applied to females. And I was like, wow, this is an old movie.
Yeah. There is some interesting gender stuff going on here, but we can dig into that here shortly, I think.
Yeah. If you hadn't guessed, we're going to be doing The Apartment from 1960, the Billy Wilder film starring Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. But before we get into that, I do have a couple quick comments to breeze through here. So quickly go to these from our Facebook group. First one is from Jeff Williams, and he says, suggestion of the week. And this implies, Jeff, that you're going to suggest a movie every week now on the Facebook group. So I'm going to kind of hold you to that. To do this. But he says, sounds like it's time for Lee and Daniel to cover a film about racial intolerance or one about frying eggs on the sidewalk. This does both and features a great cast as well. And the movie is Tick, Tick, Tick. I think it's starring Jim Brown, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a black sheriff who's elected into this like really racist town, I guess. And all kinds of shit goes down. It looks like an exploitation.
Blazing Saddles, the drama.
Yeah, or maybe it's Blazing Saddles, the blaxploitation. I can't quite tell. I didn't go deep into looking at it, but from the posters and some of the pictures and stuff I saw, it looks like it's kind of a 70s exploitation film of some sort, or 60s. I can't remember when it was made, but yeah, I said we put it on the list, so there we go.
Definitely, we'll do it soon. By which I mean sometime in the next 10 years. Yeah.
And then we have a comment from our friend Gary Hill from Cinema Beef Podcast, which is a podcast you should check out if you have not, because he's awesome. And he says, guess who has 2 thumbs and really disliked Ocean's 8? And then he posted a picture of, I guess...
John Krasinski from The Office.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Jim from The Office pointing fingers at himself, pointing his thumbs at himself.
Yeah. I'd actually kind of want to hear why you don't like that movie, Gary, because I thought it was lightweight, fun, and charming. So that'd be interesting.
Totally agree.
But that's it for comments. So thank you guys. And of course, if you join our Facebook group, They Must Be Destroyed on Sight on Facebook, and you leave comments for us, we will always read them on the podcast and respond to them. So there you go. We can move on now to what we've watched the last while. I've got nothing to mention. I mean, I could mention I'm watching the new season of The Punisher, but I'm only 4 episodes in. I really like what I've seen so far, but I'll leave it at that. But I know you have something, Daniel. So
sure. Well, I have actually. Now that you mentioned that, I do have one thing. The 3rd season of A Series of Unfortunate Events came out.
Okay.
And that show is much better than you probably think it is, just based on the awful Jim Carrey movie or whatever. I really was liking that show when it kind of first premiered in 2016. They really crammed these into production because, I mean, it's about 3 children. One of them was a baby in the first season.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they were definitely, they intentionally like pushed this through production so they could get, you know, all the books adapted. I've never really read the books. They were like kids' books. I worked in a bookstore around the time that the last book came out. And so I had some exposure to them, but I really had no like kind of knowledge of what they were. But this 3rd season in particular has just, I mean, this story gets darker. It feels very 2019. At first you think it's kind of going to be this kind of formulaic, silly kind of genre pastiche, because the whole thing is like these 3 children, their parents die in a fire, like their house burns down, and then they end up sent off to this kind of series of awful situations, all involving this guy, Count Olaf, who's trying to get their fortune. Every book was adapted into 2 like 55-minute episodes of the television show. And at first you think like every one is going to, each book was going to be like a different scheme for Olaf to get their stuff. And then very quickly, like after 2, it starts to become like something much more interesting where there's this secret society that their parents were involved in, and then a whole bunch of different characters. And and particularly in the 3rd season, it really starts to be about what does it mean to try to do good in the world? Do our actions really determine our morality, or is it our intentions and that sort of thing? And yet it never loses that sort of whimsy. It's imagine if Tim Burton was actually good. That's kind of what this series is. It's produced by Barry Sonnenfeld, who you'll remember did Men in Black and many other things. That's been really good. We've been kind of running that on a loop in the house the last few days. So I really thought that series ended well. And since you mentioned The Punisher, I figured, something else that's good on Netflix. One little movie I wanted to mention, just because I rewatched it again kind of late at night, before bed one night. We got a giant Roku TV as our like Christmas gift to ourselves. I think I mentioned that a couple episodes ago. And so we get access to a bunch of free movies on this whatever service. You know, it runs an ad every 30 minutes, and you just go whatever. But you get some of the pleasure of like actually like watching stuff on TV. It used to be when you just tune in and go, oh, this is on. So I rewatched UHF for the first time in I think 20 years, maybe not 20 years, but close to it, 15 years or so. I'm not going to say it holds up because I'm not sure it was ever really that great to begin with. I feel like it really speaks to like a very particular moment in pop culture history, because even when the movie was made, I mean, the movie was released in 89, and all those old UHF stations were going out even then. I mean, it was the very tail end of that era. And in fact, I think in some markets it was released as like the Vidiot, and it was supposed to be like, they were reaching into that VHS era. But now like all these sketches feel like, like surreal YouTube stuff or stuff that would be on Adult Swim or whatever.
Right.
And it does feel like we've kind of wrapped all the way back around to where like that stuff just feels kind of contemporary again, despite the fact that it's literally referencing movies from like 30 years ago that, the Conan the Librarian sketch and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of kind of silly surrealism, and it's kind of a cute little movie. And if you haven't seen it in a while and you don't want to actually think, put it on.
I really like Weird Al.
Oh, I grew up on Weird Al. I mean, and he's actually one of those guys who ended up being a really decent human being as well. Yeah. Which is one of the great things is like, when you see him on Twitter, you see him like give interviews and stuff. He's got a real sense of who he is, and he's just I have nothing but respect for Weird Al. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I actually need to rewatch that film because I think it's even been longer for me since I last saw it.
Yeah, no, the ultimate, Michael Richards plays a key role in that film, and it's funny like how many of the people sort of around Weird Al have not really kind of gotten to the present age with quite as much goodwill as he has. Like
yeah,
Victoria Jackson plays his girlfriend, and. She's got her own little crazy tea party.
She has some issues, yeah.
She's got some issues, but yeah, no, it was a very pleasant rewatch, and it's great if nothing else for Kevin McCarthy. He plays kind of the main villain. I was kind of reading the Wikipedia page while I was like watching the film or rewatching the film. Kevin McCarthy was kind of seeing this as maybe he was going to try to do like the Leslie Nielsen thing and kind of come back and do these comedies as kind of the late stage resurgence, and he just kind of never really made that happen. Apparently he was literally like cracking up the second he would do his lines and just could not keep a straight face while he was filming it, which is just delightful. I mean, it seems like that was we made this film for $25 in a shoebox, and everybody had a good time making it. And you know what? It shows on screen.
Yeah, it does. What limited memories I do have of the movie are nothing but fond memories. So yeah. So we're gonna take a quick break, play some music, some podcast promos, and we'll be back with The Apartment.
You ungodly warlock.
Howdy, folks. You like blood, violence, freaks and nature?
You come to the right place. My name is Gary, and I'm your guide to Cinema Beef Podcast. Every episode, we not only deliver film reviews, we also dismantle some of your favorite and most hated films. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet.
Alright, calm down. Every show I hope to have a new co-host, podcasters and listeners alike. That's right, I'm talking to you people. I take all comers.
You're sluts.
That's not very nice. The only rules, well, let's ask the best cooler in the business.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
So join the insanity and please vent your frustrations. I'm available on TalkShoe, iTunes, and Stitcher Smart Radio. And remember, here at the Cinema Beef Podcast, if you got beef, I've got the grinder.
You ungodly warlock.
The Apartment from 1960.
Ingredient number 1, a very warm, very wonderful story about a boy, a girl, and a very special kind of problem.
Did you hear what I said, Miss Kubelik? I absolutely adore you.
Shut up and deal.
Ingredient number 2, a brilliant cast. Jack Lemmon in a delightful role which gives full rein to Jack's amazing versatility. Shirley MacLaine, whose glowing warmth lights up the screen like a Christmas tree. Fred McMurray. This is a Fred McMurray you've never seen before.
You know, you see a girl a couple of times a week just for laughs, and right away they think you're going to divorce your wife. I ask you, is that fair?
No, sir, it's very unfair, especially to your wife.
Yeah.
Ingredient number 3, Billy Wilder. There's nothing quite like that Billy Wilder, some like it hot kind of laughter.
Are we dressing for dinner?
You know, just come as you are.
Say, you're pretty good with that racket.
You should see my backhand. Wait till you see me serve the meatballs.
Mildred, he's at it again.
Directed by Billy Wilder, written by Billy Wilder and I.A.L. Diamond, starring Jack Lemmon as Calvin Clifford, or C.C., Bud Baxter, Shirley MacLaine as Fran Kubelik, Fred McMurray as Jeff D. Sheldrake, Ray Walston as Joe. A very weird to see Ray Walston this young as Joe Dobish, and even then he wasn't all that young in this film, but still. Jack Kirshen as Dr. Dreyfus, David Lewis as L. Kirkby, Edie Adams as Miss Olson, Hope Holiday as Mrs. Margie McDougall, and Joan Shawley as Sylvia. We do have a little synopsis here I pulled from IMDb. Insurance statistician C.C. Bud Baxter advances his career by making his Manhattan apartment available to executives in his company for their extramarital affairs. His boss, Jeff D. Sheldrake, finds out and promotes Bud in return for the exclusive use of the apartment for his own affair. When Sheldrake's girlfriend turns out to be Fran Kubelik, a pretty elevator operator Bud likes, he is heartbroken, but accepts the arrangement. And he leaves it at that. Ooh, he doesn't get into a lot in this film.
Yeah, no, he gets to the halfway point.
So good on you, Film Faxman. You left us wanting more, and we do get a lot more in this film. So
there is, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll let you go first, Daniel. What's your sort of...
You typically do, and I kind of want to do the very brief take. And was this your first time seeing this?
This was, I mean, for me personally, I know the reputation of this film. I'm not a big knowledgeable, like I haven't seen a lot of Billy Wilder's stuff. So, but I do, the stuff I have seen, I've appreciated, and I do know that this is considered one of the greatest movies ever made in a lot of circles. And I've seen like little scenes here and there, and I've seen mentions of it. So I am aware of the film. I've just never watched it until tonight. So. Oh
yeah, sure. Yeah. I had the advantage of when I saw this film the first time, I knew literally nothing about it. It was one of those, I caught on Turner Classic Movies sometime, I don't know, 2002, 2003, somewhere in that, era when you would just kind of flip channels and, TCM had it on, and, Robert Osborne comes out there and he says, well, this is, Billy Wilder's The Apartment with Shirley MacLaine and Jack Lemmon. And, you tell a little anecdote and then get you kind of involved. You're like, oh, I want to see the movie now, and they're about to play it. So good on you, TCM, for getting my attention. And I kind of, you do a lot of that. Like you just kind of watch the first 2 or 3 minutes and kind of go, yeah, I'll just kind of move on and do something else. I was immediately hooked into this film the first time I saw it, and just absolutely fell in love and had no idea that this was like considered a classic. I just love the characters in this. I love Shirley MacLaine is fucking amazing. I mean, she is delightful in every possible way in this film. Jack Lemmon, he's kind of coming off of Some Like It Hot, so is Billy Wilder at this point. This is kind of their follow-up to Some Like It Hot. If you've seen that film, it's much more, that's kind of the Marilyn Monroe sex romp comedy. That's a lot more. We're going to have dudes in dresses kind of dancing around and doing stuff. And it's an amazing film. It's one of the funniest films ever made. But this is going after something a lot deeper and a lot darker. And you don't realize that until you get roughly halfway through the film, really just how dark this film is going to get. Because, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, this is a feel-good sex comedy about attempted suicide and adultery and the crushing weight of capitalism on all our lives. And it ends with a gin rummy game, and it's amazing. And I don't want to kind of run over you here. I really am interested in kind of your experience watching it. So why don't I hand the reins back over, and what are your kind of general impressions?
Yeah, so even though I did know the film's reputation, and I did in general sort of know the bare structure of the plot, I was totally blown away by how this movie just sort of unfolded things. And I mean, this is a 2-hour movie that doesn't feel like 2 hours, because
I was surprised. I thought it was like an hour, 40 or so. And then, kind of coming back to rewatch it, it's like, holy shit, that's 2 hours. Like 2:04,
Yeah.
Like that's a real, especially in 1960, that's an extended length film,
Yeah. But I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, so it's got Jack Lemmon. I know Jack Lemmon's reputation. I've seen him in a lot of stuff, and he's done really good dramatic work. But I'm feeling like instantly, okay, so he's doing the more goofy Jack Lemmon. He's doing like the Tom Hanks before Tom Hanks did Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah. He's doing the good version of Tom Hanks, like early period Tom Hanks.
And I'm like, oh, I'm on board. Okay, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be whimsical. It's gonna be light. And then slowly it turns into Mad Men or Mad Men, comedic film adaptation, basically. And
it's doing Mad Men contemporaneous to when Mad Men was a thing, It was actually made, it's actually earlier because it's like shot in 1959.
Yeah.
And Mad Men kind of starts in 1960. And yet it's basically doing everything that Mad Men was trying to do over however many seasons that damn show ran.
Well, yeah.
In 2 hours,
I mean, it predicts the whole thing, because everyone who's in management in this company he works for is got a mistress. And so, it's got a very dire opinion of management and big business. I was just like sucked in by how beautiful the black and white photography. The version I watched was off of Vimeo. And I assume it's probably one of the Blu-ray prints, because, man, every detail in this just pops right out. Like, it's a fucking beautiful film.
I watched this on Amazon Prime this time, and this was, it's a phenomenal print. I did get to see this on the big screen back when we had an Alamo in this town. Womp womp. It looks... To see this, seeing this on the big screen was just one of those, like, holy God moments, because, you start picking out details that you didn't even... notice necessarily. It's just that good. It's just that amazing. There's just so much stuff kind of constantly, but it doesn't feel hurried. It doesn't feel like it's like pumping information at you. But every single scene has point, and it has kind of a comedic beat. It has a character beat. It has a thematic resonance. It's such a tight, amazing script, and then it's just filled with these phenomenal performances. Sorry, I said I was going to let you talk. I'm just filling in the details while you're,
No, and from what I understand, like, a lot of the script was either written on the fly or rewritten on the fly at the very least as they were going. So just the amount of talent behind this, both on screen and behind screen, to make a film this tight and well constructed and just beautiful to look at and to watch. I was drawn in by the characters here, like you mentioned, how good all the acting is in this. A lot of these characters at the forefront, at face value, they just look like, okay, they're your stock comedy characters in this little whimsical comedy from the late 50s, early 60s. A lot of these characters end up becoming much deeper and much more interesting as the movie goes along, and you get these unexpected little sides to them, like the doctor who lives right next door in the apartment building.
My wife literally was, I mean, particularly on this rewatch, she was kind of going, yeah, that's certainly a Jewish doctor.
Yes,
you know? That's quite the Jewish stereotype in a movie. I mean, it runs right up to that edge of being like horribly offensive. And yet,
well, I don't even think it gets necessarily that far. But it's, when you first see him, you expect him to go, "Oh, Meshuggah," you know, he's in his apartment with the pretty ladies.
It doesn't quite do like the Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's, level of thing. It's not quite, it doesn't go that far, but it's definitely, it's like, oh, there's a Jewish man in this movie,
Yeah, but
although Billy Wilder was himself Jewish, so
Yeah, but I mean, it feels like the actual truth in stereotypes, comes out. So it's those qualities, but then his character takes a really quick turn because there's a very serious sort of switch in this film halfway through the film. Man, then he just becomes a serious professional who is very judgmental with Cece, in part because Cece is perpetuating a deception in order to basically protect the honor of this lady that is
and his bosses, thing. So I mean, the whole thing is that he's been not really telling his neighbors or his landlady, what's going on, and they all think he's like this party animal, constantly bringing women over and having loud parties, but really he's sitting out in the cold. And while he's like lending his apartment to these executives at the company he works for, you get a sense like, he's almost just trying to be a nice guy. Like he just sort of, but also he knows that he's going to get promotions because of it. And there's some little bit sort of, as much as we want to like Jack Lemmon in this film, and as much as I do like him in this film, he's definitely kind of a flawed character because he's definitely currying favor and he's definitely kind of using this to his advantage. And, he's constantly kind of like, look at what a big shot I am. I mean, he's definitely not a, he does not have sort of the heart of gold that you, might anticipate,
The way I read it is he's very socially awkward and immature. And this was, and this situation that he sort of finds himself in, he's accepted into the boys' club, basically. That this is his way in, right? And he wants that. At least he thinks he wants that. I mean, by the end of the film, he realizes what a shitty person he's been and rejects that. But yeah, he's generally not a bad guy. He's definitely a nicer guy than all these fucking people he's hanging out with, because they're all really shitty people. But he does have this innate sense of honor, and he does have morals, although he definitely bends them quite a bit and makes excuses for those bending of morals to self-rationalize them. Right?
I guess you don't get the sense that he's actively tried to use this to his advantage to to like manipulate people into giving him promotions and stuff. He's not painted that way. He's painted as more, he's kind of lucked himself into this position, and as long as he's in it, he's going to take advantage of it. And he's sort of bought into the values of the system and the values of this kind of corporate ladder, but not in sort of the toxic way.
Do you but like
he flirts with Kubrick, and he's like, oh, I could put in a good word with you with the manager and all that. Like he's definitely kind of using the sort of the office to curry favors or to kind of use his kind of newfound power or whatever.
He doesn't quite do it in a lecherous way.
No. There's never a sense that it's not. I'm not claiming he's like using it as that. I mean, he's just kind of willing to play the game, and I think that's kind of the movie. His character arc is he becomes less and less willing to play that game once he sees the kind of real. I mean, once he has kind of a real experience, and I think that there's something kind of inherently problematic in the idea that he learns to be a better person after like the girl he's kind of smitten with tries to kill herself, but it's played as a real kind of character thing, and it's played like, I mean, a big chunk of this film is just these two actors, Shirley MacLaine and Jack Lemmon, sitting in the apartment and chatting and talking about stuff and playing Jim Ruby and kind of going through this experience together. And he sees, it's not that like he learns to be a better person by her suffering. He learns to be a better person by seeing sort of the stuff that he's kind of not letting himself see, and kind of the unintended after effects of this stuff, and also seeing that the values of the people that he's enabling with this, who are kind of giving him all this authority, or giving him kind of promotions and raises and stuff, that the values of those people and the values of that corporation are not the values that are, you know, sort of that he wants to be a part of. You know.
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is he discovers that he might have thought he wanted to be at first. He wanted to be like Sheldrake, Fred McMurray's character, but then he quickly realizes that he doesn't want to be that person, because that's a person that actually doesn't care about people at all. That Sheldrake is, my God, he's a fucking monster.
Like every scene, Fred McMurray, man, like Jesus Christ.
Out of all the adulterous shitheads who work right under him in management, he's the worst, and he manipulates smaller people without care of them being real people. Like, they're just pawns or possessions to him.
You find out, like, he dated his secretary 4 years ago and kept her on, and like paraded the new talent, I think was the words she used, you know, the new model in front of her for 4 years, and then like she supposed to feel bad, and she finally, you know, gets fed up and does something about it. It's like, and for a while, I mean, I think we're meant to kind of think that she's kind of poking her nose where it doesn't belong,
right?
But you know, when you finally kind of learn the you know, the history there, it definitely puts a different spin on things. This is definitely worth seeing more than once, because for instance, one of the first things that Jack Lemmon's character says to Shirley MacLaine, they're in the elevator, and he like compliments her haircut. And she's like, "Oh, I chopped it off." Pretty quickly, you learn that, you know, I mean, Jack Lemmon is complimenting her and saying, "Oh, this looks really nice. I'm glad, you know, it looks good on you." And also, she looks fucking adorable. We learned that she chopped it off because the boss, Fred McMurray, has just broken up with her, and he liked her long hair, and so she cut it. And women cutting their hair and drastically changing their appearance like that is usually a sign of incipient depression, and so, you know, it can be, you know, something that people do after a bad breakup, or in the midst of kind of a bad breakup that is kind of self-destructive behavior.
Yeah.
And it is just like all that's in like literally 2 lines of dialogue. You know?
There's such subtly dark stuff leading up to the overdose, the attempted suicide from Shirley MacLaine's character, and Fran and Cece are both kind of broken people in a way. Fran much more so. She's much more mature and knowing. She kind of knows she's fucked up, whereas Cece might be kind of lying to himself a little bit. And I guess that goes back to me sort of saying Cece is not as mature as Fran is.
Not at all.
By the end of the film, he's actually kind of growing up a little bit and coming out of his shell, whereas Fran was always grown up, and she's just kind of waiting there for him at the end to grow up, you know?
Well, I think that it's also like she's kind of realized, I mean, because she's realized that, you know, she's been attracted to these like terrible men, and that she's kind of had these experiences in her life that, and you know, like, why is she attracted to him in the first place? And look, you know, we all know that person who dated that person, who got into a situation that they should not have gotten into, and they even recognize, no, this is fucked up. But, you know, what else am I going to do? You know, I love him. What am I supposed to do about it? You know, and the answer to that is like, if he's terrible for you, maybe you should not. You need to move on. You know, it's know, there are more executives in the sea. You know,
well, I mean, and she genuinely fell in love with him at first because Fred McMurray's character is such a fucking monster, but he puts on a human face and a charm when he needs to, right?
Oh man, I love the moment. I mean, you know, because he's like playing with her, and she says, you know, like, you're playing with me, you're just keeping me on a string, you know, this is, you know, play that record again or whatever. Then when he runs into Baxter, and he's like, oh, you know, a girl, you know, you tell him it's just going to be a fun time, and then next thing you know, they think you're going to leave your wife after he's essentially said to her, like, I'm going to leave my wife. And it's like, you fucking chud, you a slime ball.
He's such a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Once Cece kind of realizes what he potentially could become, and he doesn't like that at all, and he starts to stand up for himself, and then, you know, Fran sees that there's a better way. Like, they're both victims of this system. Cece kind of wants to be part of the system at first, and he's a victim in that way. She just wants love, and she was genuinely in love with this dude, and he just threw her away like trash, just like he threw away every other woman he was with. And it's this whole sort of patriarchal boys club thing in this, and on top of that, the fucking the capitalist hey, work harder, make more money, or otherwise, fuck you,
Right.
kind of system, and it's also subtly interwoven in this. Like it never feels like it's overtly knocking you over the head with anything. It just feels also natural, and at the same time, it fools you because there's so much just great whimsical comedy stuff from Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, and their banter is so great, and there's these funny little side characters, and you're like, oh, it's a great little comedy until you hit the 1 hour mark, and then all of a sudden all these little things start seeping out even more so and overtly, and you're like, oh shit, there's so much more going on in this movie, and I see why it's 2 hours now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, again, rewatching it, you kind of look at the some of the sequences, like the rows of desks, and and these kind of workplace comedies, workplace dramas. It's sort of a lot of that imagery dates back to kind of the 30s and 40s, kind of earlier on in Wilder's career. He had originally wanted to make something like this. He originally kind of had this idea in the 40s. But at the time, you couldn't do anything like this kind of subject material on screen. This was considered radical at the time. I mean, now we kind of look at it and, it's fairly tame. But let's do a comedy about, like, a suicide attempt is, I mean, in multiple. I mean, because, he thinks that she's trying to kill herself a second time.
Yeah.
And because he smells gas. And, like, no, she just didn't know how to light his stove. And she was trying to wash his socks.
Yeah.
And then later on, there's the moment where, she comes up and she hears what she thinks is a gunshot.
That's the one moment of bullshit in this film, because there's no champagne cork that ever sounded that vividly like a gunshot. Like, that's a little much, but
well, I think I'm gonna let it go, just because I think that there's sort of the psychological element of it.
I give it the excuse that actually what you hear is what Shirley MacLaine thinks she hears in her mind.
Right. Yeah.
So I give it that excuse, and it's like I would make excuses for this film anyway, just because it's fucking good.
It's, and I mean, even one kind of like sour moment towards the end is not gonna ruin the
totally ruin the reality for me. I was just totally taken out of it. Also, the limp noodle on the tennis racket is like, that's dried up by now.
I know what dried pasta looks like when it's been sitting out for a couple of days. So believe me, I'm aware.
The person who did continuity in this film should have been fired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what garbage.
Billy Wilder, the biggest hack ever.
Yeah, tell me about it. I love God. There's so much we haven't even touched on.
It's like fucking the problem we had with Stray Dog last week. There's actually too much to talk about in this film unless we do like a 4-hour podcast on it,
or unless we do sometimes I wish we'd watch the film and then just do like a pause and be like, okay, here's what's going on in this scene. It's amazing. Do a live com, but just pausing the film instead of trying to do a commentary track,
right?
Because I kept there were moments I didn't take notes with this. I was just kind of casually rewatching it, but there's so much. Some of the dialogue, some of just the way that, I mean, all the that's the way it crumbles cookie wise. I mean, and that sort of construction that kind of comes back over and over again. And when she uses it at the end, it's a sign that, oh no, I've kind of, and it's not even I don't even know that we get the sense that she's fallen for him. I mean, we kind of get kind of the love story ending, kind of thing, where she's going to come back and play Jim Rummy with him. But I think it's more, it's kind of, it reminded me a lot of like Scott Pilgrim, the way that ends, and where it's more like, we've kind of agreed to try to make better people of ourselves together. Yeah. It's nice.
Again, I feel like Jack Lemmon's character, he's more of a boy, and he is definitely in love with her. Like, he makes these grand gestures. He says that thing about, I was Robinson Crusoe and then I saw your footprint in the sand. Like, that's something a 13-year-old thinks of,
right.
Kind of thing, right? And she's, okay, that's really cute, and I like you, and let's see where it goes. Let's play Jim Rummy and see where it goes. That's where it ends. It ends on that sort of mature note, because this movie is very slyly written. The dialogue, like you said, is really good. There's a lot of double entendres in this that slipped past a lot of people back in the day, but now they're blatant. Even the gesture she makes after one of the manager guys, when you first see Fran taking the elevator up and he slaps her on the ass. One of these days, I'm basically just going to get your penis caught in this door and chop it off.
I love the little hand motion she does whenever she presses an elevator button. She does this little flippy wrist thing, and then I'm doing it now. Lee can see me, but obviously the audience will not. But there's a lot of like really cute physical comedy. Another bit with the tennis racket where he's singing and making pasta.
Yeah.
You know, like he says, "Oh, I use the racket as a colander." Really? And then it's like, "Yeah, sure. I mean, why not?" You know.
Yeah.
And then he gets to do it later on, and it's like, well, yeah, that actually works pretty well if you're Jack Lemmon and you're a brilliant physical comedian. You know, he does this little thing where he's like, you should watch me serve the meatballs, and he's miming like hitting them with the racket. I mean, you know, there's some great little comedy bits there. You know,
yeah, no, that's another great thing I like about this is it's genuinely really funny and part of like it doesn't feel, and I'm sure we've both suffered from the same sort of thing where. We look at an old comedy and go, okay, this is going to be dated. Like the comedy's going to be dated and shit. And no, I watched this and I was laughing out loud in some parts. It's actually a really funny comedy. It still holds up.
When he comes in with the cold and then he has to, he has to rearrange all these schedules in order to like have the apartment to himself so he can actually go to bed.
Yeah.
And, so I call this one guy and I've got to cancel. Oh, well, can I have this other night instead? Oh, no, somebody else has that night. Okay, let me call. And he's got to and then he has to recall everybody and say like, okay, you're good for Friday. Hang up. Dial. And we just watch the whole thing, and like Jack Lemmon's continued exasperation just gets funnier and funnier. I always love watching this film around this time of year because, kind of the end of the year, because it is actually set in that sort of Christmas to New Year's. It's a Christmas movie. This is my
new favorite Christmas movie, by the way.
Yeah, I that was kind of where I was going with that. I mean, we always joke, oh, Die Hard is the perfect Christmas movie, or Gremlins, or Lethal Weapon. But for me, this is the one that really strikes me as, there's a difference between like movie set at Christmas versus Christmas movie, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a movie that is sort of about what it's like to be like single and alone on Christmas. It's very much that sort of sense of I'm in the city. You mentioned earlier, kind of I was a Robinson Crusoe on a desert island, and then by Friday showed up. Which you're right, it's a little bit of a kind of a cheesy romantic poet line, kind of a little bit of a, yeah, okay, whatever guy. But also it does kind of speak to like his experience. So just kind of feeling like, I'm alone in a city of 8 million people, and this is just kind of what life is like. And, again, we don't really get a sense of why he's caring about getting a promotion. I mean, certainly one of the things is by the standards of films of this time that this is kind of a little ramshackle rundown apartment compared to like apartments you'd see in a movie.
Right.
But I look at that apartment and I'm like, that's a perfectly fine, little apartment for, somebody living by themselves. And
looks comfy to me, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's got a TV, he's got, a record player, he's got
a fairly spacious bedroom.
He's got what seems to be a pretty easy commute to work. I'm just looking at that and going like, there are people living in the city now who I sure would dream to have that apartment at anything like the price that he's paying.
$94 a
he makes $95 a week,
and he
pays $85 a month
for the apartment. Yeah.
And if you work that out, he's basically making like $40,000 a year in today's money.
Yeah. I actually had that in the trivia. This is probably my favorite movie I've seen this year so far. First time I watched this.
Sure, no. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it doesn't get to go on my list, but it would definitely be on that list for sure. I also there's a great little moment. I just want to bring it up. I feel like we're not really doing this film justice because we're just like go see it. If you haven't seen it, it's brilliant. Like do the there's hardly any problems I have with this at all. One of the great little moments is he goes on Christmas Eve. He goes to the bar and he hangs out and he drinks like I think 7 martinis or something like that.
Yeah, he's lining up
before the bar floozy comes over.
And before that he was at the party or whatever, was he not?
Right, and he had a couple of drinks at the party.
So
right?
he's pretty drunk at this point.
He's pretty hammered. I mean, you got to think, okay, it's been a few hours. I mean, he's not like pounding them back, but he's kind of pounding them back,
Yeah.
Also, New Year's Eve party, who knows? They're probably watering down the drinks a bit.
Could be, yeah.
But then he gets into this like little one night stand thing with this bar floozy.
Hope Holiday.
Who's great in this. Like she
blows the straw wrappers at him to try to get his attention, and I'm not having any of this shit.
Yeah, he's not. He's everybody's reveling but him. And she's like, she comes over and you buy me a drink, I'll buy you a song. She plays some music, And he's just like, oh, come on. Like, really, we're not doing it.
And
then she starts talking about how her husband is imprisoned by Castro.
Yeah.
And, same old sob story. My husband, the jockey, got imprisoned by Castro. He's 99 pounds and 5'2". How many times have you heard that one?
Yeah, I mean, he asked her, was he a revolutionary? No, he was never mixed up in that stuff. It's just, And then she wrote a letter to Castro, and he still wouldn't let him out.
Yeah, that rat Fink. I wrote him a letter 2 weeks ago, and he hasn't responded yet. I
bet he didn't treat Che Guevara this way.
Yeah, it's just such a it's such a weird little aside in this movie, that you just kind of get this little scene, and it's counterpointed with one of the darkest scenes in the movie, where Sheldrake Kubelik gives him a gift that she thought he would enjoy. It was like, yeah, we're gonna have to keep this here. I can't take it home.
Right.
Then he just gives her a $100 bill, which again is $4,000 or something in today's money.
Yeah.
Or $1,000 or something like that in today's money. So it's a fairly substantial gift. And but he's like, I can't be seen out actually buying something for you. People would talk, So he gives her money, and then suddenly she's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna take off. I guess I'm gonna get undressed now. And he's well, what are you doing? He's like, well, you paid for it, right? And that's he's like, you're not that. Don't say that. You're not that cheap. It was $100 ain't that cheap. No, that's not cheap at all. That's pretty pricey, I gotta say. Yeah, no, and that literally leads directly into her, trying to commit suicide. In lieu of a suicide note, she just puts the $100 bill in an envelope with his name on it, and it's astonishing. Again, I saw this knowing nothing like this was going to happen. Yeah. When you run into that, the movie went there. Really? This movie actually went there? So you get this kind of cute little funny talking about Castro in a broad New Jersey accent alongside, our heroine is killing herself with pills,
Yeah, it's this really weird balance that works really well.
And it works brilliantly because immediately, he gets up to the apartment and, he kind of realizes what's happened. And he has to kick out the new girl, and I feel bad for her because she thought she was going to get some, and
and I liked her.
It wasn't her fault. I liked her a lot. I'm like, let's
party. Let's have some fun.
Let's introduce some Polly in this situation.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'd be down for some.
It's like once she wakes up, once she wakes up, let's ask her and see what happens.
I guess we're gonna have to keep her awake somehow. God,
and let's bring the Jewish doctor over. It's not like he's doing much.
Yeah, he's got a lovely wife though, feeds her soup and also. And so he brings the doctor over, and then he really gets and the funny thing is, at this point, he's still in the I've got to protect her reputation, but also sort of the company's reputation and my boss's reputation, and this sort of belief. I think that it's weird today for us to kind of think that to the degree that CEOs were considered paragons of virtue around this time. This is certainly still during that time, pre-Nixon, pre-Watergate. And some of that is people kind of saw through the propaganda, but I think there was definitely. People saw just a regular CEO the way the normal internet douchebag sees Elon Musk or something today. It's just sort of, he's the CEO, so clearly he knows something. Yeah, clearly he's got this company we have certain standards of propriety and certain standards of behavior, and it's like, no, you're actually the worst of all of them. Fuck you asshole. Yeah, no, it's a brilliant sequence. It's a brilliant, and the movie never really gets back into quite that level of fun that it was at before.
No.
At that point, you've really kind of turned. You've got this new kind of thing going on, and while there's still a lot of funny stuff and there's still a lot of interesting stuff, there's still a lot of kind of character work that's happening. Suddenly, you realize you're in a much darker film than you were to begin with, and this film is willing to not pull the punches in that way.
Right. A lesser film would have had Cece eventually. There something would happen that would explain to all the characters who live in the apartment building with him that he's not really this disgusting playboy that they all kind of look down upon. They'd come to realize, he was just protecting this woman's reputation, and he was, and he made some mistakes, but he's generally a really good guy. They never really get to that point, although the doctor still clearly has a respect for him and likes him, and I
I think the Doctor, it's funny how they don't actually say anything, but I think the Doctor sort of gets it.
It feels like he kind of does, because they leave on good terms, right?
Once he leaves the job, he shoves that, shitty...
Yeah.
He shoves that nice job right back in McMurray's face, and then, I can't imagine that the conversation he had with the Doctor, with the neighbor at some point was,
honestly,
something like, oh, I had to leave that job. They were, it was, what's the place for me or whatever.
Honestly, I feel like the Doctor actually kind of gets it at that point when it's on New Year's when he's clearing out his apartment and he's getting ready to leave, and the Doctor comes over, and the Doctor, it almost feels like he's testing him. Hey, I've got a couple other doctors over, and we got some really hot young nurses over there if you want to come over. And he's like, no, I'm sorry, I gotta leave, I gotta go. It almost feels like there's a little bit of a test going there, like, is he really this guy, or is he this other guy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as much as a test as much as, kind of a genuine sort of attempt to, to reach out.
Could be that too, yeah.
But, hey, we got a couple of hot nurses. I mean, I'd be like, oh, sure. No, I don't have a problem with that, like.
Yeah, if this was 1975, it'd be the swinging nurses, and let's do it.
If this were made 7 years later, Anne Margaret would be one of those nurses, and
yes.
Then we can have Anne Margaret and Shirley MacLaine,
in
the same sexy movie.
Throw like Raquel Welch in there as well, or something.
Might as well. We're just going to remake the Queens.
Yeah,
we're going to do it in English, and with Jack Lemmon in all like parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, if it means I get to see those women naked, Jack Lemmon can stand there naked in front of me. I don't give a fuck. But yeah,
there is no nudity in this film. In case you're curious, but
there's just lots of double entendres.
It's pretty sexy though.
It is.
You gotta say. I mean, Shirley MacLaine. Oh my god. I mean, she's a little cray cray, but in real life, but she is lovely in this film, and I fall in love with her again every time I see this. She is just so fetching and amazing, and I think she's really doing the thing of giving us a real performance. I mean, this is not, at first you think, she's just going to be kind of the cute girl in the movie, and like, no, she's the heart of this movie, and
no, this is one of the most well-written and well-performed female roles I've seen in a movie from this era. Like, it's very deep.
She was nominated for Best Actress for this.
Yeah,
she didn't win it this year, but she was not. I mean, this did win Best Picture in 1960, and this was kind of our 1961 or whatever. This is kind of considered to be, one of the times the Academy actually got it right.
Right. I've only got like two other points I want to mention here really quick. I had a thought that there's the potential to take this story and make a really gritty noir about it, like a gritty and perverse noir, if you want to go neo-noir. I could see like Brian De Palma taking this concept, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy, he rents out his apartment to all these scumbags, and then he has cameras in the rooms, and he's filming them, and something happens, and he gets in trouble.
He's got blackmail material on one of them, and then suddenly they find out about it, and now he's on the run.
Yeah, there's a potential for another really interesting movie out of this sort of concept. And the only
Nick Nolte, 1975, is the junior executive.
Yes, that would be so good. And the only other thing, and I felt this was the most, outside of Shirley MacLaine, this was the most charming thing I saw in the film, was Jack Lemmon in that moment where he tries on his bowler hat in front of her. And and immediately I'm like, that's fucking Charlie Chaplin. Like it's totally a Charlie Chaplin moment. And I was like, wow, okay, this movie has me. It's like, I'm so sold.
But it is playing on that same kind of like modern times kind of trope. I mean, it is reaching back to that. And I think that's definitely a thing kind of going on here, is that it doesn't even feel really contemporaneous to 1959. It feels, it is very 1959 in terms of like the references they make, in terms of, the television and, sort of, it feels very of that moment, but it's also hearkening back a little bit to sort of a prior era. It's playing an interesting game of, kind of being something that's both kind of the moment, and sort of, there's a timelessness to it that comes from that. And I think that we missed that a bit in terms of seeing it in 2018, because it all just kind of feels kind of sort of generic. Oh, this was some generic past or whatever,
Right. I think what you were saying there with how Wilder had wanted to make this movie for so long, there's a lot of the heart of this movie is still contemporaneous to that period of time when he first conceived of it.
Yeah.
So you get this Charlie Chaplin reference, and you get that sort of physical, almost slapstick comedy. It's definitely toned down from Charlie Chaplin, and Buster Keaton and that sort of era, but it's still very much present. It's a nice little reference. So yeah, I like this film a lot. Like I said, best film I've seen this year so far. So there we go.
Awesome.
Yeah. So a little bit of trivia here.
And we've already done Stray Dog as well. Like, Stray Dog is a fucking masterpiece. This is better than Stray Dog, you know.
Well,
I think this might be my favorite Billy Wilder film, actually.
Okay, well, the thing is, I'm thinking, you know, for our first time watches of 2019.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm going on this. I don't know if I like this better than Stray Dog, but it's close. It's, you know, neck and neck kind of thing. So for this film, Billy Wilder became the first person to win an Academy Award for Best Picture, Director, and Screenplay. And this was the last black and white movie to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards until The Artist in 2011, which is pretty interesting. And Schindler's List did in 1993, but that had color sequences. And
right.
Schindler's List is, well...
Let's never talk about Schindler's
List. Yeah, it's not that.
I have another podcast on which we might get to cover that one. So, you know,
it's not the great movie everyone makes it out to be. To create the effect of the vast sea of faces laboring grimly and impressionally at the desks in the huge insurance company, and this is one of the cool things about this movie, how there's this sense of space in this film. He's confined in his apartment and he seems comfortable there, except for after it becomes used so many times, and he's definitely comfortable in the elevator with Shirley MacLaine, but then whenever he's, you know, uncomfortable, he's in these big open spaces, like he's sitting on a park bench or he's in this fucking massive office building. Basically what they did with this, and this is just a practical effect thing, full-size actors set in the desks in front, and as you went along in the shot, there were children dressed in suits at tiny desks towards the rear. So the room was definitely not as big as it looked. And then you get even further back and it's just like smaller desks with cutout figures operated by wires moving, like fucking ingenious stuff. Like, there's a million examples of the production design and Billy Wilder just making calls on set to get things in this, and it's great. Like, again, 4-hour podcast, we'd cover all this, but
well, and also, I mean, just in terms of like the, you know, directorial genius, you know, for, you know, roughly half this film is set in one location, you know, at one time or another, and that's really remarkable. Also, I mean, you know, while there are some exteriors shot in New York City, most of this is shot like on a stage in California as well, and you never get that sense.
Never do. No,
I believe it's completely organic, that everything is like right there. I found a blog post that they actually tracked down some of the locations that are in the film. I'll send you that link so you can put it in the show notes. It's just kind of like then and now, and sort of they track down like the address he gives isn't the actual address, but it turns out to be just a couple of blocks away. And, you know, so they, you know, it's been remodeled since then, that sort of thing. And, you know, like they found like the park bench and like, that actually is walking distance from where the apartment's supposed to be. So, you know, good job on that. I mean, you know, it's one of those, like, it actually seems like, like a genuinely somebody put some effort into this, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can see it. We were having a discussion about how movies, you know, how you can pick out more details on the 55-inch screen or whatever you have now. This is a movie perfect for that shit, because there's so much going on in this film.
Well, even like after he fires the pretty secretary, the next time, you know, Jack Lemmon comes up there, he's got a new secretary and she's 70 years old. I mean, it's just, you know, and I'm not blaming an actress or a woman for being, I mean, you know, that's not fine, but it is very clear, like, you know, get me one I'm not going to want to fuck.
Yeah, it speaks to Sheldrake's character, what a monster he is. Nasal spray that Jack Lemmon uses in the film was actually milk, because that's the only way you could get it to appear on camera, basically. So he was squirting milk into his nose, which is something.
That's a committed actor.
CC, just a poor accountant, but inside his apartment are 2 authentic Tiffany studio lamps worth hardly anything when the film was made, but now are worth between $30,000 to $40,000 each. Bud's salary is $94.70 a week in 1959, or $769.26 a week, just $40,000 a year in 2014. His rent is $85 a month, or $690.47 a month in 2014. And
I guarantee you that apartment would not go for $700 a month.
No. Interesting fact here, political-wise, the film was lauded by Soviet bloc critics as an indictment of the American system and a story that could only have happened in a capitalistic society like New York. At a dinner honoring him in East Berlin, Billy Wilder said the movie could have happened anywhere in Hong Kong, Tokyo, Rome, Paris, London, etc. When Wilder said the one place it could not have happened was Moscow, the East Germans broke into thunderous applause and cheers. When the ovation died down, Wilder continued, "The reason this picture could not have taken place in Moscow is that in Moscow nobody has his own apartment." And the remark was met with grim silence, apparently. So, interesting.
I mean, anytime you have a stratification of resources that are being controlled by a few people, this basic sort of thing can happen. If it's not, the CEO of some insurance company, but, the politically powerful player on a workers' council that gives out the plum assignments or whatever, it's the same fucking mechanism.
Right,
right.
Right.
It's not. Socialism would solve this problem, but, the Soviet Union,
not really socialist.
No. They were very authoritarian, asshole, shithead, state-run bullshit.
Yeah.
And murderous regimes and all that sort of thing. We don't need to get into that. But, so we'll go there.
Most interesting thing that I think, and this goes back to how kind of scandalous this movie was for its time. According to Fred McMurray, after the film's release, he was accosted by women in the street who berated him for making a dirty, filthy movie, quote unquote. One of them hit him with her purse, apparently, at some point. Fred McMurray's fan mail was overwhelmingly against his role as the no-good chief executive Sheldrake. Yeah, Fred McMurray was like a big star prior to this. He did a lot of great stuff.
He did like a bunch of sitcoms. Like he was this kind of, like which was he on Father Knows Best or My Three Sons?
I can't remember. Before this, he had this really stalwart Hollywood career. Like he was kind of like Henry Fonda in a way, where he was, America's dad or whatever. Like the guy everyone liked.
I think about this. I think about this performance with Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West a lot. Like it's a very similar kind of switcheroo there.
Yeah,
because you could believe, because originally when you see him in the film, when he's kind of berating Baxter for, you think I don't know what's happening in this company, you think I don't know what's going on here, we can't have this in our company, and Baxter's like, no, never again, it's never going to happen, of course not. And then he's like, I'm sorry, I thought you were a bright guy, I'm told you were astute, give me the fucking key. And it's not quite, I just shot a small child in the face, like Henry Fonda and Once Upon a Time in the West.
Not far removed. It's not far removed.
Yeah, no, it's on that spectrum.
Yeah, but the response shook him so much he vowed to never take on another such role. Although, also, that's a little bit of sweetening of the thing there. Also, another reason he ever took on such a role is because Disney. He just signed a contract with Disney, and they offered him a lot of money for shit like the Shaggy Dog and stuff, where he became, where he really became America's, smiling dad character. Like, hey, Fred McMurray, everyone likes that guy, kind of thing. So,
and Tim Allen swore he would never again play a serial killer. Allow me to go make 85 Toy Story sequels now.
Yeah, pretty much. Budget for this was $3 million. Box office $24.6 million, which is pretty fucking staggering for 1960. That's good stuff.
That's like a $250 million box office haul today.
DVD info. There's a million DVD versions of this, most of them from MGM over the early 2000s, but if you want some nice Blu-ray editions, there's a 2012 MGM Blu-ray, and there's a 2017 and 2018 Arrow Blu-ray release. I think the 2017 was like a limited edition thing with some extra stuff on it, but there's also a 2018 that's available out there, so go get it.
And it is on Amazon Prime. If you're an Amazon Prime person, there are, I think, a couple different versions of it, but I just picked one and hit play, and it was brilliant, so.
And like I said, Vimeo as well. And the Vimeo print, like I said, is probably the Blu-ray print. So check it out in Vimeo if you're not sure first, and then buy it afterwards. I think I'm going to buy this. So
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, I'm surprised I don't own this. It was just never one that, came up in the like I must own this for some particular reason. But, I've watched it quite a few. I mean, not a lot. It's one that I don't like kind of revisit a lot, but I think I am going to try to start watching this around the holidays once a year. I think this is going to be like
it is a Christmas movie, man. It's kind of one that deserves to take a deep dive into and keep coming back to it and looking at all the details and getting all the nuances, because there's a lot of shit going on in this film. Yeah. So Daniel, what are we doing next time?
Next time, I put this out to our friend of the pod, Jack Graham. I love being able to say that. Friend of the pod,
Yeah.
I put this out to our friend Jack, who has been on this podcast a few times, and I just said, "Hey, is there anything you want to see us do?" I've been enjoying doing the black and white movies, and I just kind of want to keep doing that for a little while. And he recommended the Battle of Algiers, and so we're gonna do the Battle of Algiers next week.
Nice. Little bit that I looked into this,
which I have not seen. So,
yeah.
But I've heard is astonishing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the little bit I looked into this, it's got some newsreel documentary type shooting style in it. It's got a Ennio Morricone soundtrack to it. I'm on board.
Yeah. You had me at black and white and Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, like that just sounds cool enough as it is. But there we go. So it's going to be the Battle of Algiers. We're gonna talk about something the French doesn't want to talk about all that much,
because that's not hard to do, really. To find things that the French aren't really too comfortable with talking about. Ixnay on the revolution,
Ixnay on the imperialist bullshit that our country participated in, like all the other countries, but we don't own up to it even more so. Yeah. So that's going to be it. Daniel, where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Daniel E. Harper if you want to follow what I'm doing lately. I do have a new podcast, which people seem to be enjoying, which does not involve anything that goes on this podcast, but it is with my friend Jack. It's called I Don't Speak German, and it's examination. We're going every week as long as we can kind of keep them up. Examination of the various figures, topics, and concepts and ideas and events of what's been going on with the white nationalist right over the last couple of years, because I've spent a lot of time listening to racists yell at me through podcast form. So if that sounds amusing to you, we've been getting pretty good reviews on it. We would love to get that into more people's ear holes, because I think that it's a kind of important thing to get out there for people. The first episode was on Richard Spencer. The second episode was on David Duke. The third episode, which we'll be recording this weekend, will be on the Unite the Right rally, which is in Charlottesville, August 12th, 2017. And that one is almost certainly going to be a two-parter. So we'll see where we go from there. We're just kind of picking topics. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to listen to Jack and me talk about horrifying people and things for about an hour a week, that's the way to do that.
And it's both on Libsyn and YouTube now. And I'll once again provide the links for that in the show notes for anyone interested. And
we are working to get that on iTunes. Once we get that on iTunes, I'm hoping to kind of spread it around a little bit more. But people seem to have a real resistance to actually subscribing to podcasts that are not on iTunes. It's like weird. It's an RSS feed. You just plug it into whatever the thing is. But
but at the same time, people have a real problem with leaving reviews and pumping up the podcasts they like on iTunes as well, because the iTunes interface is shit.
Well, iTunes is complete shit. Like let's just admit, iTunes has always been complete shit.
Yeah,
but they have complete market dominance on this stuff.
That's the thing.
And so everybody has their balls in a vice. Everyone with balls who wants to produce audio content like podcasts has those balls in a vice.
Yep.
If you do not have balls, you have some other piece of anatomy in some other very uncomfortable place.
Your pussy is being pinched by iTunes.
Whatever, and not in a fun way, for sure.
No, not in a fun way. Definitely not.
You're forced to deal with iTunes if you want to gain any kind of audience at all, and yet they make the process of getting on iTunes completely opaque and nasty, and so much so that you basically just pay someone else to do it for you, and then they reject you for no reason, because we've been trying to get other podcasts on there, and we can't figure out why. Like, it just never seems to work, and you just kind of shrug your shoulders and go, well, I guess we're just not on iTunes. And then when you tell your people about your podcast, you go like, hey, look, you should check out my podcast. It's in this place. Like, oh, is it on iTunes? No, I don't know why.
You mean I can't click on just iTunes and have it automatically downloaded? I actually have to go to a website and download it with a physical link?
You mean instead of clicking on the button that says iTunes on it, I have to click on the button that's two over from that? That's kind of RSS. I have to click on that button? I don't understand how that works.
Yeah.
No, that's
too much work.
That just sounds like bullshit. Yeah.
That's the same people who put timestamps on YouTube videos. Same fucking Nazis. I hate them all.
Anyway, you can find that at idon'tspeakgermanpod.blogspot.com, I think is the...
it's going to be linked, so everyone will find it.
Check it out.
Yeah. And of course, you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our, if you want to go there, Apple Podcasts link, and our YouTube and our Facebook group. And,
we are now going to be banned from Apple Podcasts. That's going to be the thing. Like, they know we just whined about them, and it's over now. It's over.
We just talked about the man, and now the man's going to bring the hammer down.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'll give a fuck.
Maybe I'll let him use my apartment and, to fuck his mistress. And then, well, you can keep your listing there. We got some really nice listings if you'll let me, let my girlfriend, try to commit suicide in your house. Like,
hey, if you let the Mark Maron podcast fuck some chick in your apartment, we'll keep you on the surface.
And not even Mark Maron himself. I'm just imagining like some gestalt of the podcast, like walking into my house, like some 2D representation of Mark Maron, like yelling at me and then telling me like about this coffee that his. It's been a long time since I listened to that podcast, but
it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't even know how that works, but it's funny. All right, I think we're done. Let's get out of here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Daniel, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Para mim era anjo de bondade, partiu me deixando saudade. Eu que era feliz, tornei-me um sofredor, porque perdi meu grande amor. Chorar, como eu chorei, ninguém deve chorar. Amar.
You have been listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For other episodes, our links to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as links to podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.